Welcome to Janus Corporation's IIPP training on bloodborne pathogens exposure control plan. The following training is in compliance with Cal OSHA Bloodborne Pathogen Standard 8 CCR 5193. This training is designed to reduce on-the-job exposure to bloodborne pathogens. Job functions that may be impacted by potential exposure are those of laborers whose duties include the hazardous and non-hazardous demolition of various building materials, the use of razor knives and scrapers, 5-in-1 scraping tools, and various other hand and power tools. Exposure determination. That's employees that may come into contact with human blood or other potentially infectious materials. If an employee is exposed to blood or other potentially infectious material, it is considered exposure, whether or not personal protective equipment is worn at the time of exposure. Other potentially infectious materials means human bodily fluids such as any fluid released by the body, vomit, and all bodily fluids in situations where it is difficult or impossible to differentiate between bodily fluids, such as during an emergency response. This includes both human and animals, living or deceased. Janus uses an enhanced universal precautions when handling bodily fluids. All bodily fluids, from living or deceased humans and animals, are handled as though they are infectious. The following engineering controls will be used by Janus employees whenever a project or event requires the handling of blood, even from a minor scrape or cut, or other bodily fluids. Hand washing stations, which may be the exit shower, must be readily accessible to all employees who have the potential for exposure. Employees will wash their hands and other exposed skin with soap and hot water for 15 seconds immediately or as soon as possible after contact with blood or other potentially infectious material, in a manner causing friction on both the inner and outer surfaces of the hands. Employees will be provided with antiseptic hand cleaner and paper towels when hand washing is not feasible. However, when sanitizer is used, hand washing must take place as soon as possible after exposure. Eating, drinking, smoking, applying cosmetic or lip balm, and handling contact lenses is prohibited in work areas where there is potential for exposure to bloodborne pathogens, the same as for lead and asbestos contaminants. If professional medical attention is required, a local ambulance will be the first choice. A personal car will be the second. If a personal car is taken, impervious materials that will not allow fluid to seep through, should be used to prevent contamination of the vehicle. New employees or employees being transferred from different projects will receive training about any potential exposure from the project supervisor. The same personal protective equipment, such as suits and respirators, preferably with full face shield, but safety glasses at a minimum, as worn for asbestos and lead removal, are used to help minimize bloodborne pathogen transfer. The suit protects the body, with the hood protecting the head. The respirator protects the face, nose, and mouth. The face shield, goggles, or safety glasses protect the eyes, and the gloves protect the hands. For contaminated materials, employees must use bleach to disinfect any blood or other potentially infectious materials. Apply the bleach with single-use neoprene or nitrile gloves and allow it to sit for 15 minutes. Place any single-use gloves that have been contaminated in a leak-proof biohazard garbage bag. Dispose of the bag by disposing in a designated on-site biohazard disposal location, or alternatively, transport to a designated biohazard facility. Regulated waste, blood, materials contaminated with blood, and other potentially infectious materials should be placed in an appropriate container, labeled, and disposed of in accordance with applicable state, federal, and local laws. Employees will be warned of biohazard in bags by labels attached to the disposal bags. Labels will be orange-red and marked as a biohazard or with the biohazard symbol. Maintaining our work area in a clean and sanitary condition is an important part of the Janus Corporation Bloodborne Pathogens Compliance Program. Employees must decontaminate the work surfaces and equipment with an appropriate disinfectant after completing cleanup procedures involving blood or other potentially infectious materials. All equipment, environmental surfaces, and work surfaces shall be decontaminated immediately or as soon as feasible after contamination. Employees must clean and disinfect when surfaces become contaminated and after any spill of blood or other potentially infectious material. Employees will use a solution of 1 part bleach to 10 parts water for cleaning and disinfecting. Working surfaces and equipment will be cleaned, disinfected, and maintained. Cleaning and disinfecting are 2 separate steps. Potentially contaminated broken glass will be picked up using mechanical means, such as a dustpan and a brush or tongs. not simply using your hands to pick up the glass. Janus Corporation policy requires the use of universal precautions for handling of all soiled laundry. That means assuming all bodily fluids on clothing is infectious. Laundry contaminated with blood or other potentially infectious materials will be handled as little as possible. Employees who handle contaminated laundry will utilize personal protective equipment to prevent contact with blood or other potentially infectious material from coming into contact with skin or street clothes. Contaminated clothing will remain on the premises or will be sent directly to a laundry facility for cleaning. Employees will be given the option of reimbursement for the cost of contaminated clothing, hepatitis B vaccination, and post-exposure evaluation and follow-up. Janus Corporation shall make available within 10 days of possible exposure the hepatitis B vaccine and vaccination series to all employees who have occupational exposure at no cost to the employee. An exposure incident is any contact of blood, other potentially infectious material, or contact with non-intact skin or mucous membranes, whether they be human or animal. Any employee having an exposure incident shall inform their supervisor. Both the employee and the supervisor shall inform the senior safety officer or the operations manager as soon as possible. All employees who have an exposure incident will be offered a confidential post-exposure evaluation and follow-up in accordance with the OSHA standard. This includes a visit to a physician selected by the employer. The healthcare professional written opinion will be provided to the employee within 15 days of the evaluation. Thank you for taking Janus Corporation's IIPP Bloodborne Pathogens Exposure Control Plan training. Training was created by Michael Sharp, Senior Safety Officer for Janus Corporation. 209-993-6123, or reach me at my email mikes@januscorp.com. Please proceed to the quiz.